All right, I want to introduce Nancy Cusack, who has been doing work with youth for a very, very long time.
Yeah.
I've worked with her in a number of different capacities. She's currently with the the Midwest Children Resource Center, and she's part of their Runaway Intervention Center. But what?
It's all good. Nothing.
Okay, close enough for government work. Here we go. Nancy Cusack.
Yeah. So, thank you. Thank you, everyone. And, most importantly, thank you, all of you, for what you do. Because I think that there's so much power in youth feeling like they're being seen and received. And I just want to challenge you. I remember, or there are many days in my work, I have walked away feeling powerless and like I'm not doing enough. But I'm also frequently reminded that being kind and receiving and validating of others is a lot. So I want to thank you all for the hard work that you do. And just let me get through a couple of minutes of initial anxiety, and then I think I can kind of not be dizzy up here. I click right here, right?
Yes.
I'm here to talk about motivation right there. Thanks. Okay, thanks. Motivational interviewing, and we're going to do a little review of harm reduction first. And I'm going to start out with Duncan and Miller wrote a couple books. One is called Escape from Babel, and the other one is A Heroic Client. And even though I'm here to talk about some techniques, they were sitting around having beers and pizza, and they're like, what really creates change for people? What really happens that we all do with working with young people and adults to help create change? And they studied 50 years of studies, and they came up with, it's really about the relationship. It's really about the connection that you have. And I know that when you're seeing young people on the streets or in the libraries or different places, it might be just a one-time thing. Or it might be you get to see them over time. But I imagine that everybody they're going to remember who they felt a connection with. So, and many of you work in agencies, right? Everybody works in different agencies and does. Do many of you get to see young people over time frequently? So it's about the relationship, and we all know this, but I think it's important to kind of remember that. Okay? So I'm going to start with a little bit on harm reduction. Does anybody know when harm reduction was created? It was created in the 1920s in England. It was some physicians were sitting around and they decided, you know what, we have some people that are abusing drugs, and we need to help them maintain and prescribe some drugs to help maintain their well-being and health. And it just kind of like spittered away until the early 1980s, when in Liverpool they created their Mary clinics, and then most of you have probably know about Amsterdam, started the first needle exchange program. So the whole idea was, where am I at? It's not about, for harm reduction and motivational interviewing, it's not a top-down approach. It's not like you come to our clinic and I'm the expert. It's more, how do we create less harm? If someone is in a role that they're being prostituted, harm reduction might be, how do I help them see resources if they want to get to clinics and make sure that their health is okay? Or if someone is running away, how do we look at they run away to a safe place? I, as a elder woman, might wish that they weren't on the streets or wish that they could find someone safe. But I'm going to say, these are your resources if you land on the street, or this is where help can be if you choose, okay? So the difference is it's very, very collaborative. We both come together with knowledge and sharing, and it's client driven. They decide what they want to do. Okay? Does that make sense? So if anybody have any questions about that? I think this calls it all. It's not like, you know, pretty clear. Do you feel like everybody here grasped harm reduction pretty well? Have you been through a lot of harm reduction trainings? Did any of you find it was hard to grapple with in the beginning or not? No? Pretty simple for you? Okay. So, because I think it's really about an approach and a philosophy. It's about how we come together with others. Okay, you're shaking your head, yeah.
Well, I would agree that I think that I had to like consider and think about it.
Yeah.
Because I want to know where that line is.
Right, right. Yeah, if someone's beating somebody up every day, I have opinions about that, right? Like, could we get you into a boxing class, or could we figure out other ways? So it's hard to, I think both these approaches put us in a position to always put our own agenda in check and to not have our agenda onto others as much as I want to sometimes. I want people back in school if they can, or to feel the possibility of change in their life. But I know for myself, it doesn't really happen until I'm ready, if that makes sense. So we're going to go into all that about the change and with that so basically, this is going to be all about that. And one of the things I really like about this, that it understands that struggles and problems that any of us have are complex, they're multifaceted, and they encompass a continuum of behaviors. And this is, again, it started out with drug use, but you can use it for anything. Any questions? So I'm going to move more into motivational interviewing, and I'm going to repeat some things 2-3 different times, because I'm first going to go in the overview of it, the spirit of it, some of the techniques, and then we're going to go into stages of change model. And so we'll apply some of what the beginning is in how you move through helping with the process of change. So really, a lot about how many of you have been, if you think about your own lives and think about something you want to change, how long do you figure you think about that before you make a move? If you were just to give a generalization, would it be years, months, weeks? 6 months? At least. I mean, if I think about it, like I smoked forever. And like, I don't know how many times I thought about it before it was really time to take action on it. And so part of, if we look at our own lives, and we're kind of invested in things being better for young people that we work with, you got to kind of remember that change is a long process and that we kind of go back and forth with it, right? I mean, I think some things have taken me decades, to be honest, and some things move quite quickly. I like to believe that that change is kind of like skipping a rock on a lake. Like you reverberate and it reverberates more and you reverberates more. And so part of that is figuring out how young people can see where they have mastered things in their life and can carry that forward for themselves. Okay, am I doing this right? So it's basically the idea is it focuses on exploring and resolving ambivalence. And we're all kind of ambivalent about a number of things when it comes to change. There's things that I might not want to really give up here. It centers on the motivational process within the individual. So it's about the individual. It's not about us. And it supports change in a manner congruent with the person's values and concerns. So again, it's going to be about what the person decides they feel like they need to change in their life and how that fits with their values. And their values might be very different than mine. And that's okay. Okay. So here the thing is, I did all these cheat notes as a reminder and forgot from on my PowerPoint and forgot that I don't have access to him, so they're here, so I'm going to look at this. So basically the whole spirit, the spirit of it is it's interpersonal, it's collaborative. It evokes or draws out the person's ideas about change. It could be a young person's ideas is, I so miss my younger brother and I'm afraid he's being abused. How do I connect with him? How do I connect with someone in the community that I knows my family that I'm torn away from? It can be any level of what their idea of what they need to create change for themselves or comfort, whatever. It emphasizes the autonomy of the person. So it's kind of like they're in the driver's seat and you're in the back seat. You're kind of the secondary player. Obviously, we all do that in our work. I sometimes forget that though. I mean, So basically, is empathy pretty easy to express, do you think? That's pretty much a given. I think it's pretty hard to talk. I feel like with this recent election, I've had a lot of conversations with people who think differently than me. Not a lot, but some. And it's really required how to get past, how to just see people for who they are and have empathy for them. Support self-efficacy. And if you think about it, self-beliefs are really, really important. People can gain self-efficacy through others. I mean, if you think about it, if you're a young person who is trans-identified and you know people in your community or Laverne Cox or whoever, that they're doing it, I think I can. So it's huge to help young people if people feel like, no, I can't. I can't leave this situation. Or I'm afraid I have the fear of what will happen to me if I leave this situation. I'm afraid my pimp will go after me or whatever. Just say, well, do you know anybody else who has tried to do this? And how did they do it? Would you want to talk to them? So if someone, if I ask a young person, what do you see as your strengths? And they say, I don't have any. I'm going to say, what do your friends think about you? What do you think your friends appreciate about who you are? And so borrow it. Borrow it. Who was the adult in your life that believed in you? And what do you think they saw? And how would they know that you're able to do this? So there's all sorts of ways to help young people tap into that. Roll with resistance. And this doesn't mean in motivational interviewing thinking, it doesn't mean resistance of, I don't want to do anything different or I don't want to change. It's that there's a resistance as it occurs between the problem and the solution. Like the person isn't quite able to see that there are possible solutions. They're not there able to visualize that possibility. And we want to help that. So basically, the other thing is developing discrepancy. That motivation for change occurs when there's a mismatch between where I'm at now and where I want to be. So part of the language of motivational interviewing is going to be about movement. Like, what do you think it would look like if that were to change in your life? How might you feel different about yourself? What would be your first sign that you knew that? Okay, any questions? You sure? Oh, please. Okay, so the discrepancy is wanting them to see that maybe there is a different way of doing this or of something happening. Again, something they've identified. So I was just talking about it gives attention to the language of change. It is designed to strengthen a person's motivation for and movement toward a specific goal by eliciting and exploring the person's own argument for change. So I have a I do 3 young women's support groups, and most of the people in my groups have suffered from sexual trauma. And as you all know, that when you know, through trauma, one's life view gets altered. The idea that people can be safe or trustworthy gets kind of totally thrown out. So, and if you're living on the streets and your survival is by being prostituted or beat up by your pimp, and part of you feels like this person really loves me and cares about me, and I'm scared shitless all the time, there makes this whole piece of change and steps going forward is much more harder, I think, for the work that you guys are doing. It just is. Because if you think about it, some people would say why many of us don't change is fear. And there's a lot of obstacles to overcome when someone's living in fear almost all the time. Even if they might not even always recognize that for themselves. So this is a slow, ginger, patient, kind process. Any comments? Okay. So the idea is that the true power of change rests within the person. It's ultimately up to the person to follow through with making changes happen. It's empowering for the individual, but also gives them responsibility for their actions. So I was saying I do these groups, and I have this young woman who they had to flee Georgia. Their dad was just so much violence, sexual trauma, violence. And she's this person who, for the first 5 minutes of every group, she just gave me a really, really hard time, like for 6 months. And then when somebody else would come into the group and mean mug me or look at me like, you know, what the hell are you? She'd go, we don't treat Nancy that way. So she became, in this process of her like needing to challenge me every week, kind of somehow decided she was my ally. And she wanted to be my co-group leader. And she is she is a mother who basically ends up hospitalized about every 2 to 3 months for a suicide attempt. She's so over-medicated. And this young person hasn't had adults in her life kind of just be consistently present for her. And she never goes to school. So she decided she is now going to go into a program that will help her get her high school diploma and CNA certificate. It's taken 2 years to get there. And she is so proud and so happy. And she's about ready to go buy clothes. And so the idea when we're talking with young people, it would have never worked for anyone to look at her and say, "You're not going to do it. What do you mean you're talking about school? You've been trying for 4 years." Like, so it's always about where do you see yourself once you're doing that? And how do you want to, how have you been a fighter in the past and how do you want to fight for yourself this time? Okay? So basically, with the studies, you know, if they think, I'm working also in an adult mental health clinic for the first time. I've always worked with adults through young people, but I've been seeing now people who who are struggling with mental illness and feel like the medication is what's changed them. And I'm always like, no, 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 no. It's just helping you do the work. You're the one doing the change. You're the one making the difference. You're the one who's taking the steps forward. And people are much more likely to maintain that change if they feel like they've been in the driver's seat, not that somebody else did that to them. Does that make sense? Like they're the ones who did it. You know, this model and stages of change came out of the addiction model. And just a side note with research with regards to addiction, you know, people who relapse, the people who have the easiest time getting back on track, getting back to the changes they've made and not using, let's say, so to speak, are the people who don't shame and blame themselves and don't have a lot of guilt and beat themselves up. But again, if we're dealing with young people who have gotten a lot of mixed messages and negative messages about who they are, it's another battle why you have to kind of get in there and have them see this is because I can do it. Okay? So basically, we want to draw out the person's own ideas. Lasting change is more likely to occur when the person discovers their own reason and determination for change. Can anybody give an example of somebody they know, a young person that just recently made a change in their life and they had reasons why they decided to do that? Anybody have an example? Okay.
I'm actually a previous resident of the Ain't That Young shelter, and now I'm an overnight staff.
It's fabulous.
That's a change, right?
That's huge. And that's huge. Do you let the young people in the shelter know that or not?
I actually just had one night that I worked, so I'm like new.
Congratulations.
But I've been working with youth for roughly 4 years, and the youth know what they want. You know, they just need the opportunity to be heard, and
Yes.
they just, you know, need that safe space, you know, so they can voice what's on their mind.
Mm-hmm.
So, and my reason to change is I became a stepdad. I got an 11-year-old stepdaughter and a 9-year-old stepson. So, you know, that gave me a very, you know, positive thing to change for. So, yeah.
Congratulations. That's a great story. And it wasn't anything anybody told you. Even though maybe some people had been helpful along the way, told you so, but it was like it came from within. Like, I am really, this is why it's time.
I just looked at it, you know, I spent 7 years homeless. My mom kicked me when I was 11 years old, and spent years of, you know, having people pity me. And I didn't want that anymore.
Yeah.
Don't pity me. You know, look at me as a success story.
Yeah.
Not no person that went through hell. No, look at me as someone that had a reason, and my reason was I want to be the help that I never had growing up on these streets. You know, and I know the situation, I know the struggle. So, what better person to teach some kids about struggle, you know, than me? You know, that's been through it, that's walked in their shoes. You know, I wouldn't feel such like a hypocrite. You know, so.
I think that's beautiful.
Thank
And you were really clear. You needed the people to see all of you, not the struggle, but all of who you are, and
Right.
meet you where you're at.
Right.
And that's what this is about. Thank you very much. So basically, our job is to draw out the person's own motivations and skills for change. You know, and part of that drawing out might be, you know, I think what's so, the other thing that's so hard is if we're helping youth to eventually get to a place where they can have their own apartment, it's hard when they haven't had jobs that are seen on the books, so to speak, you know? So I think the obstacle's even more harder. It's not like, well, wait a minute, do you remember that one time you felt like you were an imposter but went into that job and it worked out fine for you? So sometimes it might be about, well, who, you know, somebody might say, well, you know, I was really good in English. I liked writing. Like, I was actually good at it. So you want to help, you transfer whatever it is. Or I was really good at being a big brother and looking out for my siblings. And I don't know that the adults in my life very much appreciated that, but I was good at that. So whatever it is, you want them to draw out those strengths and to try to apply it towards the possibility. This, I spoke about this. So there's, you know, here's the thing. This is how disgusting. Me with cigarettes. Both my parents died of lung cancer, and I still didn't quit smoking. It took me to have cancer myself. I'm fine. It was 19 years ago. And I would, you know, I'm like, I'm a cancer survivor and I'm smoking. Like, the shame. And that's what it took. So it didn't take any, you know, even though it was painful nursing my mother to her death. It was just one of the most painful things I've done. It took, I'm glad you laughed because it's so, the irony of it. But that's what it took. It took like, I can't. So, I think that's yeah. So you want to help the young person examine the discrepancy between their current circumstances and their values and future goals. So my value as a cancer survivor was like, I've already flirted with death once here. Who the hell do I think I am? And that's what got me the values in the future. Okay, I already said this. Those who attribute changes to their own efforts, I want to be a great stepfather. This is my next thing to do. Rather than chance, or are more likely to maintain the gains regardless of how the hell they got there. We don't care how they got there. We just care that we help in the process of them getting there. Make sense? So we're going to go into the stages of change, and I think that we should probably practice like a couple scenarios and kind of walk through how that would work, okay? So first of all, again, change is a process. We don't go one step, you know, we could go one step, we could go a couple back, might go more in and out. It's a process. It's not an event. It's characterized by a series of changes. In an attempt to change a behavior, a person typically cycles through these stages of change. Okay? And these stages, again, this came from Praska. the addiction model. And I think what helps me, again, this isn't about me, but when I get frustrated and I want people to move quicker, I take they're in pre-contemplation. Okay. That this is just where we're at, and that's okay. So there's a handout here with this too. Do you guys have an extra one? Can you give me? Oh, she did well by doing the two sides. Oh, I wouldn't have even noticed. It's all good. So, are people familiar with the stages of change model? Okay. So basically, we're going to go into, let's think of who wants to volunteer. You don't have to volunteer whole, so you can. A problem or some struggle for someone you know.
I have heavy.
Hold up.
I have heavy feet.
I don't think this thing works.
It does? Does it sound better? Okay, sorry. I think I have heavy feet. That's my problem. Like I get speeding tickets.
I
And I've
didn't
gotten
know what
them for
you
a
meant.
really,
Like,
really
did you
long time.
you-
But the reason is because my feet are heavy.
Yes.
When I turned 15, they just got really,
Really
really heavy.
heavy. They just want to move quickly and heavy. Okay, so you want to do heavy feet as a part of this?
Well, that's a problem that I have.
Okay. I'm just curious, in what ways has heavy feet been beneficial to you?
Well, I get places really fast. I make my meetings. Obviously, I didn't have a heavy foot when I came here because I was running a little late.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, I get lots done.
So it really helps you.
It does.
Does it make you, did you feel like, okay, I need to be where I'm at. I'm going where I'm going to get.
It makes me feel very efficient, and I value efficiency.
Well, efficiency is very, very important. I'm wondering in what ways, it's beneficial. It gets you where you need to go. It gives you efficiency. Those are all pretty cool things.
I know.
I'm wondering in what ways it's not helpful to you, that heavy feet.
Oh. Yeah, maybe, because they kind of cost me a lot of money, and I value money as well.
So aren't tickets about, how much are they, about $175 a pop or $150?
Yeah, sometimes, maybe a little more.
So it steals away from your pocketbook.
It does.
So it helps you get there, feel efficient, but it steals your money away from you.
Sometimes, yes.
What else does it do in ways it's not helpful to you?
Well, I just found out my car insurance is a little bit higher.
Like a lot higher?
Yeah, maybe.
So is efficiency related to money
Well,
important to you?
the efficiency allows me to get to work on time.
Yes,
and get
you
lots
need that.
done.
Yes,
Mhm.
yes. So you sound pretty. You're in where? Pre-contemplation, kinda.
Yeah.
Would you say that that's an example of pre-contemplation? Would it make sense for me to continue on and try to convince this heavy foot stuff to, no? I was shocked. I'm like, heavy foot? Well, wait, like tripping? Because like I can easily trip or whatever, but yeah, that was good.
It's totally true. Because I did have to look at my insurance just recently.
Did you?
Yeah. So when thinking about this, I mean, I'm not ready to make a huge drastic change.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I think about my heavy feet, it helps me when I work with my young people.
In what ways just the idea that some things are just going to be this way?
Well, when I get good and ready, when my insurance goes so high
Yeah.
that my job doesn't pay for it,
Uh-huh.
then maybe I will be, well, I'll definitely be in the increased self-awareness and I might be ready to make the change.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Is there anything I could have or maybe should have done differently there? It was a good example. You could always check your wheels, you know. Do you know about that?
No, I don't.
Well, I kept getting tickets, and like in one day I got one in Minnesota and one in South Dakota, and I got another one in a 2-week period, and well, this was a long time ago, but I do. And the state of Minnesota threatened to take my driver's license away. I was driving a green Datsun. It had holes in literally had a couple holes at the bottom by my feet. It was so rusted out. And I got pulled over, and I said, I've been in trouble, so I'm really, really trying to be mindful about not speeding. And he said, I think your wheels are too big for your car. And he had me clock it from mile marker to mile marker. Turns out my odometer was like 15 points off. So you might not have lead foot. It might be too big a wheel, you know. So it was very kind that someone was kind to me, because I was like, really, I'm trying not to do this. So basically, we are in pre-contemplation. So the process is conscious raising and increasing self-awareness. And really, you're just trying to establish rapport at this point. Do any of you ask people, like, when you have a 10-minute interaction with someone, let's say you're on Hennepin Avenue or downtown or somewhere, how does that really start out? Does it ever even, are you thinking more, I'm just going to talk to them and let them know I'm here with these resources, and, you know, this is how you get a hold of me if you ever feel like, you know, you want to check some of these resources out? Or is there an opportunity to say, are you looking for anything you want different in your life? Do you feel like that's too soon or not? Or does it depend on how the interaction is going? I've only been with StreetWorks I've been out a few times, and we kind of like let people come to us and went from there. Anything? Do any of you have that opportunity to ask that, or do you feel like it's just too soon, too quickly? I think so too. So it's really more after seeing them a while. Okay. I think, so they've seen you around, your face is familiar. You're one of those, do everybody still have green bags? Good, the green bag people. I like that. I do. Always happy. Remember when they used to just get filled up with all sorts of fun things and candy and still? Yeah, all those good things. Hopefully loads of socks.
This time of year, lots of socks.
Socks are just so important. Warm, and that might be change. Having warm socks, dry socks. To me, that's just the pleasures in life that everybody should have. So basically, in contemplation, you're still conscious raising. You're thinking about change, but apprehensive. Still not ready to give up that lead foot. What would be a situation that a young person you know is going through that could apply here? Anyone want to throw anything out? Healthier relationships. Anybody read that U of M report? It was just horrible. And I think one of my most struggle things in the groups I do is trying to combat rape culture and the pain of that. So when we're talking healthy relationships, are we talking emotionally, physically, all of that? All of that. It's hard, isn't it? So I'm trying to think.
Nancy, do you want a hypothetical situation?
Sure.
Okay.
Or I was just going to say one, but go for it. Go for it. No, go for it.
Okay, the one that kind of comes to mind is, let's say I'm an outreach worker that works primarily in the schools, and I visit a school maybe once a week. But if there's a particular issue a social worker identifies, they might call me out in a specific situation. So I get a call. They've got a young male high school student who they believe is being commercially sexually exploited. This person hasn't come out and said that, but based on the wonderful trainings they've gotten from the Safe Harbors videos, they know how to identify commercial sexual exploitation, and they give me a call and they say, this young boy isn't telling us what's actually going on, but there's just way too many signs. He would be willing to meet with you. Would you be willing to meet with him? I come out, I meet with this young man, and I try to have a conversation with him. And obviously, I've got this tip-off from the social worker that he's being exploited, and every question I ask, kind of like leading towards that, he kind of waves off. And so from a stages of change perspective, whether he's in pre-contemplation or contemplation, I'm not sure, but he's very clearly not talking to me about that particular thing. So then from a motivational interviewing, rather than trying to push, hey, let's talk about this exploitation, from motivational interviewing, I'm going to try to figure out what he wants to talk about. And that could be something as simple as change of clothes.
Right.
You know, and while I know I want to be going after the exploitation, right now, all he wants to talk about is change of clothes, and that's what we talk about.
Does everybody agree? Yeah.
And to that point, if a youth has just met you and you are a random adult and you're asking all these prying questions and they don't have that relationship established with you, why should they have to tell you about their commercial sexual exploitation?
They shouldn't. And they're smart not to. I just feel like I have to earn trust. I earn it, and it might take a year for me to earn that, and that's okay. There's just no way. However, because first of all, we don't even know if this young man has a problem with it. If he is, he might be okay with this. He might feel like he's connected to people. It might feel validating for him. He might feel like it is a way for him to have some things in his life that he hasn't had before. Emotionally, empowerment. We don't know what his gains are, so we want it. We're about establishing that relationship and getting the new clothes. And thank you, that was a great example, because it's driven by the person, what they are motivated for and what they want to change. Okay? So let's say you see him around, or you're back at that school. What about you've gotten him some resources for clothes? He went and got them, right? It's always tempting to just give stuff. I mean, we do need to give stuff out, no doubt about it. But with this spirit of this, you want them to be able to tap into their own resources and do the action. So what if 6 months from now, this young person, you show up at the school, hasn't been around the school much, comes in, it's got a black eye, looks kind of beat up, and says, I'm just really tired of how things have been going. I'm tired. I feel weary. I feel old. I'm just tired of this shit. Do you think that they might be into this contemplation part? We might be at a point to tip the balance. Might not be. He might have to go through this 6, 10 more times through conversations with different people. But if he's at the tip the balance, that would be moving away from the awareness of the problem to a possible solution. would there be other ways for you to get some of your emotional, I'm not saying this person's getting their emotional needs met, but what would you want to vision if you're really tired of the shit? And if you can always parrot back their language when it's about that, I'm tired of this, I want something to be different. And then remember that. I remember when you were saying you wanted things to be different. Are you still feeling that way? You know, what's gone on to cause that for you? Or is there a part of you that going, I can just keep going on, you know, so you going on as is. So you want to, you know, not totally jump on that change train, but keep valuing both aspects. Does that make sense?
Nancy, can I
Yeah,
just point
please.
something out?
I need you.
For the outreach workers in the room, I think this is a point in terms of the work that we do where we sometimes make a mistake. We look at this contemplation stage where a person's starting to look at new ideas, where there's basically when they are saying, I'm tired of the shit, we start making suggestions of an alternative. And that really, we miss a chance in that kind of stage because rather than suggesting changes that we think are good ideas, we miss a chance to actually figure out what they envision in terms of that change. I hate the shit. Rather than suggesting, let's get you into a shelter, I hate the shit should be a really good time to ask the client, well, what does a different situation look like to you? Okay? And we still want to get them off the street. We will still want to get them away from pimps. We want to get them into safe places. But before we can start suggesting what those safe places are, we need to find out what they look like to the youth. And we need to figure out whether or not we can actually offer what they're looking for. So that was my suggestion, Nancy.
No, I appreciate that. Because part of this is about you identify the person's personal reasons for wanting to make the change. Talk about the benefits and barriers, help them talk about it. Your example, because I always want to go fast. When they're ready, I want to get heavy-footed and just move. And if I have someone who wants me to kind of move quickly or than when I'm ready to, what would that cause me to want to do? Totally. I would back up and I would start defending, wait a minute, this is why this works for me and quit bugging me. It would just invite the stubbornness out in me. So basically, you're absolutely, but you want to weave it back the next time if you can. I know. So, and part of it is encouraging short-term achievable goals. So what if that person just says, I'm so worn out, I just want a massage or go to a spa day, or I just want to not be bothered for a day. I don't want to deal with people. You know, it could be that, right? So in the preparation stage, so let's say this young man that James brought up, let's say that you've gone another 6 months or you've seen him around, or let's just say that they say, you know, I keep thinking about this and I just want things to be different in my life. What question would you ask them? I just want things to be different. So, in what way do you want your life to be different? That's a beautiful question. What if they say, I don't know yet. I just can't stand it this way. I'm just feeling like all anybody looks at me is for what I can give them and my body. And I just don't want to do this anymore. Perfect. That's great, because it's what can I do to help you? I think that's beautiful. So because then they can, and you might not be able to, but then who can, or where are these resources? Right? How do you know You know, or the how would you feel differently if this difference in your life happened? How would you know you've arrived to that point? I'd be feeling good about myself. I'd be unlocking the keys to my own apartment.
And then going into this, it's something that we've kind of already been just talking about, but it hasn't really been brought up, is just the importance of open-ended questions to continue this dialogue. It's easy for people to get discouraged if you're asking them yes or no questions, and it really doesn't lead you anywhere. But having that importance of just focusing on open-ended questions and opening that dialogue is key to even get to any of these stages and to try to transition through the stages as well. So,
Absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely. It is. It shuts down conversations when we ask those. Yes, James.
I like to ask questions about maybe what made them feel good in the past,
I think that's great.
or what made them happy in the past, even if it's something really small.
Yeah. You know what's so nice about that is somebody might say, I used to like to paint. And you know, you ask, well, what is it about painting that you like? And well, I felt really kind of relaxed, or I was kind of good at it, or people noticed me. They noticed my work. So you're amplifying the possibilities, and by God, I bet you might be easier to get a set of paints and a palette. I mean, you know that those are resources, but it's something that they internally have defined what they want. You've asked how do I help, and where have you felt this in the past? Yeah.
Let's get you into shelter tonight.
Come
Maybe
on,
let's
why not?
Get you a paint set.
Well, yeah. And find a tree where no one sit under the tree and paint. But by tapping into the past successes, you're helping them gain momentum for future successes or mastery. Because again, they know they're the person who only they did that. I like to also ask who believed in you, who saw your shine. I don't know if I'd say your shine, but you know, who, you know, because I always want to say, shine on, show us your shine, but they're looking at me like, oh, whatever. Which I get those looks a lot. But who do you know that really saw your capabilities? Who in your life really believed in you? There was a story, I mean, here, this is a little bit off of youth work, but it fits. I was, Michael White, who was the co-founder of Narrative Therapy out of Australia, was working with a man that was reported for their child protection who was abusing his kids. And instead of, you know, acting like, you asshole, you don't get to harm people, he, you know, took him back. You know, he ended up saying, do you act in ways that you sometimes wish you wouldn't? And yeah, and blah, blah, blah. And basically, as it went forward, they asked who believed in you. And he said, you know, I was getting harmed in my home as a kid. And on my way to school every day, I'd stop in my friend's house, and his mom would make me toast. And she was always kind to me, and she really saw me. So then Michael White helped him to reconnect with her. So whenever he felt like his stress was feeling too unmanageable, that he might end up being aggressive, he would consult her through calling her. So I would always encourage, if people feel like they were, you know, people they want, it's safe for them to look up. I think some people are going to be, no, I can't. I don't want them to see me now. I don't want them to see what's going on in my life. But maybe someday. But just bringing it up, they might go back to that person someday. Preparation. So let's say we've got the paint sets. We've been painting for a while. run into him, and he's like, I'm ready to get out of this. I've been doing this for a couple years, and I'm ready. I'm ready. What kind of questions would you want to ask to move into the preparation stage? Does ready mean you want to hook up with some of your old friends? Does that mean you're thinking you want to move somewhere out, live some? What does that mean? Does ready mean, I always wanted to do art. I want to take some art classes. I want a safe place to put my head at night. We would love that answer, wouldn't we? I don't think they would say it quite like that. But when you're preparing, you're providing a menu of possibilities, right? It could be, again, taking a class. It could be, I just need to get away from this and the power that people have over me. And these are the steps I want to make, and can you help me? I don't think somebody would say it that clearly, but we would look at it as steps, small steps for mastery. Remember the rock in the lake, the ripple effect? Just little things at a time, okay? I can't think of anything more peaceful than sitting under a tree and painting, and I'm horrible at painting, but just that peace of mind is priceless for that person.
Could I throw out a couple more?
Please,
okay.
do.
So just in terms, again, for the outreach workers, in terms of that preparation stage and sitting down with a client and coming up with a plan, some of the things to think about, some of the things to ask about before you even start talking about what that plan looks like. Find out what that youth wants to do, If your safety plan is all about what you think is going to keep the youth safe, the youth is less likely to do it, less likely to succeed at doing it. So finding out, you may be thinking, let's get you into shelter. If that youth is thinking, I just never want to see the pimp again, and you keep talking shelter and you're not talking about how you're going to keep him away from the pimp, he's not going to buy the plan. The other thing, too, is ask not only what they most want, but what they're most worried about, because your plan has to address that in some way. The other thing, too, is to really recognize that in terms of stages of change, we're still preparation. We're not actually doing it yet. So when you have a plan, if it's got a deadline or if it's got, okay, our plan involves leaving at 3 o'clock this afternoon, that's a setup, okay? Recognize that you're in preparation. You're not taking the action yet. You're coming up with a plan. So your plan actually has to be fluid enough to do it today or next week or next month or 6 months from now when the youth is actually ready to jump into the next stage. So remember where you're at in those stages of change. If you're in preparation, you're preparing. Don't push towards the doing, and don't create plans that are time sensitive or have high barriers, because the plan's not going to work. So just keep that in mind, outreach workers and anybody else.
I can't imagine anything more terrorizing than being afraid to leave my pimp. I mean, the ramifications, the repercussions, the power that person might have over me. I think I would be paralyzed with fear. And I think, again, back to trauma, I think anxiety is about fear. And I was afraid to come here and talk to you guys today. And that's nothing compared to if I were this young man, I would want to take 5 steps back. Because what does this mean for me to really leave? Are they going to come after me? Are they going to try to harm me? What are they going to do? Because I don't know that I could feel if I'm that afraid. I don't know that I would feel there was really any safe place to hide. I just don't, because I would feel like they have so much power, and I've seen what they do to others who have gone up against them. So it might be, even though all of this is here, this is just a really loaded place to be. You know, and I might want to know, I want to go, have you seen anybody else leave your pimp? And how did they do it? Do you know how they are now? How did they pull it off? You know, they could say, well, I have this aunt that lives in New York. Maybe I would go there for a while. Yeah, who knows? But I think you are dealing with so much intense internalized fear in this area when we're talking about this example, that you have to proceed with caution. Okay? So you might go, you're in this place of, you're supporting their perseverance. I mean, there's some more strength in this young person than I certainly have. And you have to remember that they are eventually may get there. So you want to support? All right. And you also want to help them weigh out the pros and cons like we did. What are the fears? What would that look like? And they might need to ponder this for a long, long time before they make the next move. Yes?
And then I think also being prepared to know that they're going to fall back often. They might be ready for action, then all of a sudden it's back into contemplation. It could stay there for months at a time, years, who knows?
Totally.
And just knowing that it's not linear at all. It goes, I guess it's linear to an extent, back and forth, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
It's just, you want to see, obviously, always taking those steps forward. But maybe to take a step forward, you need to go back and go back to contemplation. Really sit there and think about how you need to focus in that stage too. So, because that happens a lot.
I think that's great. Thank you very much. So, you do want to support and affirm any changes. That could mean, you know, I'm now going to the red door. I'm painting. I've found a place for me to just sit and reflect now and again. It might, you know, or I'm pocketing some money somewhere, getting ready for that. You want to rehearse new coping strategies. I have a woman I was working with yesterday who hasn't worked in probably 15 years, and she's got a job. And her fear is she's going to hear voices again because she struggles with hearing voices, and then she gets really irritated and she wants to look at people, and what am I going to do in a job when they have, you know, that was her biggest concern. How do I handle this? And she's in a very supportive job. You know, it's through goodwill, and she's been able to communicate her struggles. And so that was her biggest concern yesterday, is her wanting to rehearse how she was going to cope. What do I do if I see my pimp's car pull up when I'm walking down the street or standing at the bus stop or whatever? And then you also want to review goals, and not in the review goals like, I am going to start exercising 2 times a week. It's more bring it back to their language. You know, you've been saying you want out of this life. And it feels like it might take a while. So you want to validate their strength, their self-efficacy, what they've been able to pull off in the past, and help them start to strategize. But again, that doesn't mean we're there yet. So maintenance would be after the change has happened, and how do you keep reinforcing that and asking them how it's going? What's hard about it? When have you been tempted to go back? Have you? And that's okay. What was that like for you? Did it feel different? Did it kind of reinforce, like, yeah, this isn't for me anymore, or whatever their language might be around that? Any questions around that? So we understand that if a change is made, that doesn't mean it's going to continue. And so the most important part is we don't want them to feel like they can't share with us or feel shamed. Okay, now what are they going to think about me? That's why we have to keep reiterating that this is a process and it can be hard and there's obstacles. Okay, there we have that open-ended questions. Reflections. The reflection is about what the person, if my heavy feet, I like my heavy feet. Reflections are kind of, I think with change can also come some loss. That you might be giving, even though we might not see it, that there's giving up some things that may have worked for the person, and that's really okay. Summaries, kind of summarizing what they want to do, etc. So the reflections is the person comes to understand it's from their reflections. It's from their perspective. Reflective listening obviously is a core intervention towards guiding the client towards change, supporting the goal, directed aspect of MI. And one of the things I don't think I said, the thing about a collaboration is if you think about a basket, they have something to put in it and you have something to put in it and you're sharing it back and forth. And part of that reflection is going back to what they've been saying. So this is where you want to jump in, but like James said, you don't want to take it to, all right, let's get in the car and go to the shelter. These are the statements might lend towards a preference for change. I would like to, or I wish I could just sit in my grandma's kitchen and have some banana bread. Or I really want this. I really want to get a different kind of job. I really want to do different kind of work. I think to do this, we kind of really have to empty out ourselves, so to speak. I mean, part of really, really, really being present with people is just receiving and interacting. It's letting go of any of the shoulds that we might carry in our own lives. We're just present for them. I just gave school as an example, but these are those ability statements. I think I could handle going. I think I really could handle doing this life differently, or getting back into a routine of maybe going to classes. I know that I can do well if I put my mind to it. And at that point, I would want them, are there other things that you've put your mind to in the past that it worked for you? And what was that? I might want to spend a long time there if I can, because they might say, oh no, anything I try to do goes to shit. No. It could be something as simple as learning how to ride a bike, but you want to take them back to those possibilities for themselves. You could hear somebody say, well, I remember when I was 10 years old and I wanted to be an architect, or it might be, I'm going to go look around at buildings. Statements client make that are specific arguments for change. I know I would feel better if I got away from my PIM. I know that I wouldn't live in this constant terror or be freaked out on who I'm seeing out on the streets. I know that I could, because you have all these possibilities, you have all these decades ahead. And I think that's the hard piece for me is that I just know some young people that don't they can't yet see possibilities for their dreams. Because when you're living in survival mode and you're told derogatory things about yourself all the time, frequently, it's hard to imagine that things could possibly be different. So these are the more action part. So instead of I'm taking them to the shelter, they're saying, I'm going to do this. I'm ready to go do this. So these are questions to ask yourself. Are the goals mine or theirs? I think these are really, really important. I don't mean to, but they just are. Am I trying? This is where I get caught. I get caught, even though I know this, and even though young people have been training me for almost 3 decades to not be this way, I still get caught into trying to convince them. It doesn't work. Am I listening more or am I talking more? Because I know when I'm in talk mode, I'm trying to sell them something, I'm trying to convince them something, and they're not buying it. Or, you know, you can relate? Yeah. I mean, we all do it. We all do it. Are they following my directions or learning transferable skills? Obviously, you know, I'm surprised. I mean, I know, how many of you know young people are afraid to leave messages for people? So I do kind of direct a little bit, you know, like, I know it's scary. I remember how hard that felt. This is how you do, you know, this is, what do you want to say? So there obviously is some of that. Because I hate to, there is a power, I hate it. By me being an adult, there is a power differential. I do have more experience in life. That doesn't mean I know what's best for them, but there might be some skills I impart or say, oh, could you try this or could you try that? But I really want to do that minimally. I really want to have that be minimal and tap into the skills that they already possess themselves. Okay? Any questions before we're done? Ended up sooner. Do these feel doable to you all? Do you feel like some of you already feel like you already practice this?
I think if you have it, it's changed for you too, how you
Yeah.
operate,
Yeah.
how you deal with young people.
Yeah.
So it's a process for us also.
Oh, certainly is. It certainly is. It certainly is. You know, I feel like there is just no other way that I could do this work without really viewing people in the most positive light as far as the resources and talents and that they possess within themselves. And I know that there are days that it's discouraging. You know, there are days where I'm like, you know, but it only happens that way because I'm more caught in my agenda and not theirs. Okay? So again, thank you for all the hard work you all do.
Could I ask a question?
Yes.
Well, we still got the time.
Yeah.
This question is going out to the outreach workers or outreach worker supervisors that are in the room. We've been going through an hour and a half of this training on stages of change and motivational interviewing. Is it occurring to the outreach workers just how hard this is actually going to be to actually do? Okay, Rand? Tell me about that.
Absolutely, because a lot of time our interactions are really short.
Yeah.
And you might not see a youth for months. And yeah, my interactions are probably like 2 minutes. And then I'm like, bye, have a good day. And then maybe I'll see them 3 months from now. And I will forget their name and have to reset again.
Yeah.
That's a perfect example of how this is hard. This is hard on outreach when You know, sometimes when we talk about motivational interviewing, we're talking about sitting down with the youth that we have a relationship with, and we're having an hour session, 2-hour sessions on outreach. It can be much shorter, and the conversations are very, very different. What's another way where this would be hard to do? This is what we need to be doing. But if we're going to do it, let's be honest about why this is difficult and how. From a harm reduction standpoint, if this is really client-centered and the client dictates kind of our discussion and our plans, and that client is still at a pre-contemplative stage or even just at a contemplative stage, that means they are still participating in actions that may be extremely harmful to them.
They also might be engaging in something that's getting their basic needs met, so shelter or food, whereas, I mean, as outreach workers, we can provide food shelves and help with that, but getting into long-term housing can take months, at least sometimes, so just working in the meantime where this is where they're getting their basic needs met, and being realistic about that, and using harm reduction.
Thank you, Dusty.
And he smiled.
We're gonna cut
he
that
loved
from the
what
video.
you said.
That was embarrassing. That person who just spoke was Fran.
You're someone else. Now that you've been,
I am
there's someone.
totally going to get in trouble for that.
I think that brings up a good point that sometimes young people might be ready to take action and the resources are not available when you need them to be. So I think that's a huge challenge is how do you, when you really want to seize those opportunities and those external barriers make it really hard to do that.
Systems are slow. It's too slow.
Invariably, the night that the person decides it's time to get into shelter is the one when the shelters are full.
Right.
I will advocate with a lot of youth who are working a lot with the counties as well, and it's difficult when there's also so many, everyone's on a different timeline and they need to see achievable changes, quote unquote, in like 45 days because otherwise they can't work with the youth anymore, and that's also really frustrating.
That's the worst. That's the worst. And you have some people who, in systems, part of their role is kind of more of a top-down. You have to do this, or this won't happen. So you're going against that grain too. And it's not their fault. It's the system that they work in. So do you think, even though you're saying, I might have a 2-minute interaction, does any part of you see that you might be a safe, familiar face to them? That it might, maybe not always. You might just be another adult that's not worth it trusting, but that there are times that if the interaction was good or something happened in those couple minutes, they might not remember what it was, the interaction, or you might not, but that somehow they felt seen. Do you believe that? I don't ever sit down with people without saying, I'm going to ask you some difficult questions. If you don't want to answer, please do not. And we'll just move on. And I really, really feel that way. Again, I've brought up trauma because I work with a lot of people who have experienced trauma. And if you've been a victim of sexual trauma, ownership of your body was taken away from you. You weren't given the right, so to speak. So I'm going to make sure in all my interactions that I'm not trying to take away, try not to be too invasive. And they are invasive, so I acknowledge it and just say, you don't have to answer if you're not comfortable. And I think that sets a stage, hopefully. And I really mean it. I don't need to know this. And you certainly don't have to give me the details of it. You were going to say something?
I was gonna say, at times some of the smallest, connections does make the biggest difference in someone's life, because it's happened to me several times while running one of these outreach workers, and I'll be in one of these like slump moods, just don't want to be messed with, don't want to be bothered, and they say one thing to me, and it changes my whole day, and that whole week I'm thinking about that one outreach worker that I talked for that 2 minutes. So the work that you guys do, the work that I was gonna be doing, so I was gonna be an outreach worker, but life takes me to different directions, but I'm still working in this, type of field, and, it is beneficial just to make those small connections. So, yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. And, and I think it's the young person who defines what was helpful. We don't. So I might feel like I just botched that, and they might feel like it's good. And another time I might feel like, oh, wow, I'm feeling really competent. Like, I finally clicked, and they might like, that wasn't helpful at all, So, again, we don't get to define that. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Nancy.
Yes, thanks.